Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of Quincy Carrier Live, where we talk about the most recent happenings in Cleveland Brown football. And we talk about what is on the minds of Browns fans. I want to thank everybody who is here at the beginning of the show. I want to thank the producers of this show for being able to put this show together. And also want to thank everybody who will be here on the replay gang as well. So I want to thank everybody here. Make sure that you stay active in chat. As you know, we have people looking through the chat, making sure that, well, not making sure, looking for some of your takes to put on screen, and so we can interact and talk about these things as we see fit. So make sure you're active in that chat, and make sure if you have a question, ask it. Now, with all of that being said, the NFL Combine just wrapped up. And usually that is when all of this draft stuff tends to hit a bit of a fever pitch, where we see a lot of hot takes, a lot of new takes about the draft, stock going up, stock going down. It's a crazy market until we get about 2 weeks away from the draft, where things tend to stabilize. There's a lot of hot takes out there. There's a lot of takes about quarterback. And there's a lot to talk about with quarterback. Somebody asked me in chat, what is my 40 time? It's definitely above 5. I'll tell you that. I am not running a good 40. My 40 time is trash. All right. I'm not going to sit here and tell y'all lies. My 40 time is not good. I got bad knees now. So I'll probably run one of them Rich Eisen times if I'm being real with it. I ain't ran 40 yards in a long time. But all of that being said, this quarterback class is been highly talked about for negative reasons. We can all agree on that. This has not been the most positively spoken upon quarterback classes, and it seems even more negative because the last two quarterback classes back to back have been pretty solid, right? CJ Stroud, Bryce Young, Anthony Richardson. Nobody was debating whether those quarterbacks were worth taking early in the draft. Same thing can be said for Jaden Daniels, Drake May, and Caleb Williams. That was a draft class that people had spent multiple years waiting. Now it feels like it's a hangover year, right? And that happens every once in a while when there's amazing quarterback draft class. There's a hangover the year after. And this definitely feels like a hangover year of a draft class. But I don't want to get too caught up in that. So what I'm going to do today, and I'm going to have another video come out where I'm going to do the opposite. But what I'm going to do today, I'm going to go through all the quarterback prospects in the draft that I know anything about, and I'm going to talk about what I like about all of these prospects, right? There's a lot of things out there to tell you what to not like about these prospects. But what do I like about these prospects? Let's start. And when I said pretty much every quarterback, I meant it. We're going to start with 445th on the mock draft database consensus big board. We're going to start with Brady Cook. What positive thing can I say about Brady Cook? Brady Cook has been really safe with the football at Missouri. He had the lowest turnover-worthy percentage, play percentage in college football. So he takes care of the football. He does not make reckless decisions, and he's operated as a solid game manager. I also think Brady Cook has a future as an actor. He kind of looks like Tom Brady. His first name is Brady, so maybe there's something there. Maybe he could play Tom Brady in a biopic. But in all seriousness, he had a decent combine. I think people were more impressed than they thought they were going to be with Brady Cook after the combine, and that is the nice thing I have to say about Brady Cook. All right, let's go. 352 Memphis quarterback Seth Henigan. Yeah. Now, I thought Seth Henigan actually had a decent showing at the Senior Bowl. I would say comfortably, depending on who you talk to, he was either the most impressive or the second most impressive quarterback in Mobile that week. That week, you had Jackson Dart down there, Riley Leonard down there, Jalen Milroe down there, guys who are much bigger names than him. He was very consistent, and in short yardage situations, I thought he made the right decision most of the time. Seth Hennigan, quarterback out of Memphis. Let's go to Max Brosmer. Hope I pronounced that correct. What I do know about Max Brosmer is that he was an absolute beast in the FCS, played at New Hampshire in the Colonial Athletic Association, which is a AQ qualifying playoff conference in the FCS. So if you're not familiar with FCS structure, the FCS, just like the FBS, has really good conferences for that subdivision and bad conferences for that subdivision, right? Some guys come out the bad conferences, some guys come out the good ones. Basically, the three big conferences in the FCS: Missouri Valley Football Conference, where my alma mater, Youngstown State, plays. It's also where all of the Dakota schools play: South Dakota, North Dakota, South Dakota State, North Dakota State. All that's basically the best conference in FCS football. Then you have the Big Sky, which is the number 2. So it's kind of like the Big Ten to the Missouri Valley Football Conference. And then you have the Colonial Athletic, which is like the ACC in geographics and in like perception of the FCS. So he played down there. He was a beast in the FCS, 69 touchdowns, 19 interceptions. Had a 80 Pro Football Focus grade. And I thought what was impressive for him is that he went to Minnesota and he basically replicated a similar level of season at Minnesota in the Big Ten, which is a significant jump up in competition from playing at New Hampshire. So that's impressive that Mac Brosmer was able to do that. He's learned new playbooks. He's been one of the best players in a subdivision for a while. He's also a pro style quarterback and played in a true pro style offense. If you watch Minnesota play football, you will notice that there are like 14 offenses just like Minnesota's in the NFL, where he's under center, he's taking play action shots, he's doing high-low concepts. So played in a pro style offense, played in the Big Ten, transferred his success in the FCS to success in the Big Ten, and was a solid quarterback for the Minnesota Golden Gophers this year. He is somebody I think will be a fun preseason guy for a football team, right? Somebody who can give you some excitement in the preseason, because he's going to be pretty plug and play early on. Now, how high he can get after that, this is the positive video, so we're not going to go there. But I think that he'll be a fun guy to have in camp. You're not going to have to explain too much to him, and I think the preseason will be very fun with Max Brosmer, because I think he has proven that, at the level of competition the preseason is going to be for him, he can ball at that level of competition. Let's talk about Tyler Shough. I think it's Show, not Shaw. I've been saying Shaw all year, but I think it's Tyler Shough, quarterback out of Louisville. Again, there are some significant detractors to Tyler Shough for good reasons, but the positives about Tyler: prototypical size, 6'5", 230 pounds. I mean, you close your eyes, you think of a quarterback, it usually looks like Tyler Shough. Accurate passer. I think he's a really accurate passer. When he's gotten to play, he's been pretty damn accurate. And he has a good toolkit, right? Good arm, can move a little bit, can throw the ball. I think he was a former 4 or 5-star recruit. So the pedigree seems like he was pretty solid there. Physically, his measurements seem pretty good. Obviously, one of the main things you got to look at with him: age and injury history. I think he's had one full season as a starter in a very, very, very long college football career. He was the backup for Justin Herbert at one point in his career. Yeah, the Justin Herbert that got the extension, like Justin Herbert, who's been in the league a long time. He was his backup at one point in time, but that is Tyler Shough. Still a lot of stuff to like about him if you can just ignore the age and the injury history. You can find a quarterback that on tape for at least in 2024 put together a body of work there that is intriguing to NFL evaluators. No doubt about it. Let's talk about Riley Leonard, who's ranked 159th on that composite board. Riley Leonard, I think, has the personality of a future coach and like the personality of a guy that like a fan base loves. I think that's going to be the number one attribute for Riley Leonard is he's going to be sticky on a roster because I think guys on the team are going to want to have a dude like Riley Leonard around. I think coaches are going to want to have a guy like Riley Leonard around. I think a lot of football people would like to have a dude like Riley Leonard around. And oftentimes, if you're not going to be a starting quarterback, which I do not think Riley Leonard's going to be a starting quarterback, how people feel about you matters, right? That matters greatly to if you can be a guy who sticks around. I think he will. I think I wouldn't be surprised in 20 years we're talking about Riley Leonard, the upstart offensive coordinator at a school, because he has that kind of personality. Tough as nails. We saw it in the national championship game. Basically used his body as a battering ram to give Notre Dame the early lead in the national championship. Ran himself so hard that he puked on the sideline, stayed out there. So, you never have to question whether this guy is tough or not. And he's the kind of guy, again, athletic enough to be a really good practice player in the NFL. And then a fun guy, kind of that Josh Dobbs quality about him that'll make him really fun to watch in the preseason, which matters, right? You want a guy to get out there, get guys excited to be playing in the preseason. I think he could be that too. And maybe he can flash to a point to where he becomes a solid backup in the league. Riley Leonard, if your team takes him, he might not be a starter for you, but he'll be a fun guy to have on the roster. Let's go Kyle McCord, number 145 on a lot of boards here on the composite board. Kyle McCord out of Syracuse. Of course, a lot of this audience remembers Kyle McCord from his time as the starting quarterback at Ohio State University. And it was a very controversial time, and I think that's going to be the thing that I like about Kyle McCord is that he handled a very tough go of it at Ohio State, right? He was ridiculed. He was blamed for the lack of offensive success. They tried to throw him under the bus on Hard Knocks. That was a crazy clip. Y'all remember that clip from in-season Hard Knocks where the Giants are sitting there talking to Marvin Harrison Jr. and saying, hey, throw your high school best friend under the bus on TV for us. Can you do that for me? Can you do that? Can you tell me that your high school friend, possibly best friend, they went to the same high school together in Philadelphia, tell us he's cheeks in front of everybody on national TV? That's crazy. That's a crazy thing the Giants tried to do to Marvin Harrison Jr. He answered that question excellent. But again, he was kind of treated like garbage because of his year at Ohio State. That was the thing that surrounded Kyle McCord. He was treated like absolute garbage. And people kind of used him as the source of their frustration for the year that Ohio State was having, the lack of success against Michigan, all of that. And look, we've seen that kind of pressure destroy guys in college football. I mean, look, you ain't got to look far. Look at DJ Ukulele. He's in this draft class. I'm not talking about him. He's not about to get drafted. That man going straight to Canada. Straight to Canada. Because all of that stuff he dealt with at Clemson, it destroyed him. He never was the same. He transferred with two different schools, never became the guy that he was supposed to be. Just all that pressure destroyed him. Kyle McCord gets away from Ohio State, and he has his best year as a college football quarterback. He was Pro Football Focus's leader in deep ball grade, shockingly enough. Had a great game, upset Miami, kicked him out the playoff picture, had a fun season, a good season. So there's some kind of mental resiliency trait for Kyle McCord there that I do find attractive for a quarterback prospect. He dealt with a very tough Ohio State situation, a situation where he got dealt a bunch of pressure, and came out of it still being able to maintain his career, where other guys have folded underneath that kind of pressure. I I know some people are pointing out that there are some negatives about Kyle McCord, but keep in mind, this is the positive segment of the live stream. We'll get to negatives in just a second, y'all. So for those of y'all all caps raging about Kyle McCord, we're going to get to the negatives. I promise you, we're going to get to the negatives. Okay? You ain't got to wait. You ain't got to wait. You ain't got to wait that much longer, y'all. All right? Some of y'all like, I don't care that he went through that because you put him through that. That was you out there putting Kyle McCord through all that damn pain. Okay. But yeah, Kyle McCord, 145 quarterback out of Syracuse. I think how he handled that situation was impressive in my eyes. All right, let's go to 119, Dillon Gabriel. I think Dillon Gabriel is interesting because Dillon Gabriel has played college football forever. He started in college football forever, right? Tyler Shaw, 6 years, 1 year as a starter. Dillon Gabriel has never sat the bench ever in his college football career. Another thing that was interesting about Dillon Gabriel is that every year he's been a starter in college football, my man's been good, like good to great every single year. Dillon Gabriel has played college football, whether it be UCF, Oklahoma, Oregon, Big 10, Big 12, UCF, 2 different coaches. He's been through a lot of offensive coordinators. He's changed offenses a ton of times. He's going to come in understanding how to learn offense off short notice very quickly. He has a better arm than people think, right? You look at him, he's a little itty bitty guy, right? He's not big at all. He's like Spencer Rattler, tiny, like 5'10". I think he came in under 200. If he came in above 200, it's all water weight. He's small. He's really small and he's left-handed. And that's going to be something we talk about later, but better arm than you think. He can push it for that little frame. And he has been a solid quarterback everywhere he's played at every competition level. That's interesting. That is interesting. All right, let's get to Will Howard, number 88. Will Howard didn't have the throwing display I think some people wanted him to have at the combine, but I think we all knew going into the combine Will Howard's arm was not going to wow you. He's not somebody who's going to show you why he's good in shorts and a t-shirt, right? His game is about what he's done on tape. And what Will Howard has done on tape is pretty impressive. I mean, you look at what he did at the end of the season against some of the best secondaries in college football. We're talking about Will Howard slicing up a Texas secondary that has multiple first day 1 and day 2 draft picks in that secondary. We're talking about him slicing up a Tennessee secondary that was pretty solid, a Penn State secondary that was pretty solid. You go further throughout the playoffs, a Notre Dame secondary that's going to have draft picks in it. Like, he played the best competition. You can say what you want about Ohio State's championship run this year. They played the best teams in college football. Like, name me a team that they dodged. Like, what you could say, maybe Georgia, maybe the Alabama's in that conversation, maybe South Carolina. They played all the good teams in college football, all of the really good defenses. If you go on Pro Football Focus and you sort by defensive grade, all of the teams at the top 3, Will Howard has played against and played damn good against. The tape is everything for Will Howard. Obviously, there are other downfalls for him as a player, and that's why we're not talking about Will Howard as a first or early second round draft pick. But still, the tape is what the tape says, and the tape is pretty impressive for Will Howard if you look at how he processes, how quickly he decides to make a throw, and how accurate he is as a passer. Outside of Shedeur Sanders, it doesn't get more accurate in this draft class than Will Howard. So a lot positive to say about Will. I'll cut it short here so the Will Howard segment isn't like 10 minutes. Y'all know that I like how Will Howard plays football, but that just might be a me thing, right? I'm willing to admit that just might be a me thing, right? But I have my preferences. I'm allowed to have my preferences in how I like my quarterbacks to play. All right, let's go. Quinn Ewers, number 86 on the composite boards. Look, one thing you say about Quinn Ewers, he won games in college. You know, there's a lot to say about how he won these games, but he won games, and in a lot of these games, he made some big throws to get Texas over the hump. There's a lot to say about the consistency over time, all of that other stuff. But when it comes to Quinn Ewers, He has played in big time college football games, has a ton of experience in big time moments, and he's won a lot of those games at the University of Texas. So there's that about Quinn. Jalen Milroe. Let's talk about the positives with Jalen Milroe. I think it's obvious what the positives are with Jalen Milroe. There is no quarterback in this draft class that can physically offer what Jalen Milroe can offer. A world-class athlete as a runner, somebody who legitimately the argument for drafting him is, hey, even if he stinks at quarterback, you can play him at running back. And he has some spectacular moments as a quarterback. We forget the throw to Isaiah Bond against Auburn that he made on 4th and 25, absolute dot in the back corner of the end zone. Jalen Milroe has some dots in his tape. He can drop a dot. That's there for sure. And we know that Jalen Milroe has the ability to completely change the math on what it takes to tackle him once he gets loose in the backfield or once he gets downhill as a runner. RPO guy, right? If you're looking at running the ball from the quarterback position, there's no better prospect than Jalen Milroe, and Jalen Milroe is as good of a run the ball quarterback prospect as you could get. Significant concerns about his ability to throw the football, but if we're looking at this from a positive lens, you cannot overlook the athletic ability of Jalen Milroe. Jackson Dart. Jackson Dart looks the part of a franchise quarterback, right? He's 6'5", he's big size, has the frame, has the mechanics down pat, right? The ball looks like it comes out of an NFL quarterback. The question with him is, can he execute at that level on a consistent basis? But if you're looking for a guy who fits the part, who comes straight out of central casting, Jackson Dart is your man. Let's talk about the top two guys here. Shedeur Sanders. Very accurate quarterback, right? Has a lot of stuff in there where he stays in the pocket and he throws a very accurate ball downfield. I think there is, for some, a quality about him, a intangible quality about Shedeur Sanders that some really like, right? I think that's going to be the big differentiating factor with him. Some people love his personality. Love that he's willing to, call things out to his teammates and say things that people feel like need to be said. There are going to be people who hear those clips and love it. There are going to be people who hear those clips and hate it with Shedeur. But what you see is what you get with Shedeur Sanders, right? Very hard worker, a very well-trained guy, a guy who has spent his whole life under the apparatus of a Hall of Fame player in Deion Sanders. Deion speaks glowingly of him, not just because he's his son, but because this is the son that has stayed the closest to Deion Sanders' plan. And again, you can't find anybody to tell me that this dude is distracted off the field or isn't dedicated to football. And he has that accuracy trait, all of those things there. Questions with him are obvious, but we'll talk about that in a different video. But that's Shedeur Sanders, quarterback out of Colorado. I personally prefer Shedeur for the Browns offense to Cam Ward. But we'll talk about Cam Ward, who's not a bad prospect. I think people hear me say, I don't want to draft a quarterback at 2, and then people bring up Cam, and it doesn't move me and think that I hate Cam Ward as a prospect. There is a lot to like with Cam Ward as a prospect, right? He's super quick like a cat in the pocket, has, not unbelievable arm strength, but he has upper echelon. That's a better term for it. Upper echelon arm talent in the NFL. If he was throwing the football amongst all 32 NFL quarterbacks, he would be in the top half of those quarterbacks when you look at the ball and how it comes off of his hand. He's able to throw off of different platforms. The arm flexibility is there. This is somebody who can handle a pocket being a little messy because he can play with his arm angles. He can throw with people on his body. He doesn't need his base. Like, if you're looking for a quarterback who has that God-given ability to just fling a football really far with just their upper body, Cam Ward is the guy that can do that. And because he can do that, right, I think somebody brought up that Cam Ward has smallish hands. I could care less about that. For somebody like Jalen Milroe, it's a bigger concern because Jalen Milroe doesn't have the control of the ball that Cam Ward demonstrates routinely in his film. So big question about Cam Ward is, can he play under structure? Can he play in system? All of these other things, but you have no concerns about physical ability like you would with the Shedeur Sanders, who's coming in a little bit lighter, who does not have the arm talent that Cam Ward has, and possibly might even be slower than Cam Ward if they were to both run a 40 time. But that is my positive outlook on these quarterbacks. Let me know what y'all think. And before we move on to the negative outlook on these quarterbacks, I would love to put some of the comments that were coming up on screen if we could before we roll into the next segment. See here. Has my Milroe opinion changed since he experienced limb growth? So no, because I know how that voodoo magic is done. Basically, I think this happened with Brandon Allen a while back. What these guys do to get bigger hand measurements is they go to get their hands massaged in a specific way that makes their hands more flexible for a temporary period of time. Because how you measure hand size is from here to here. So it's the distance from here to here. And if you can stretch your pinky out further and stretch your thumb out further, right, you have more flexibility there, your hand is going to measure bigger. So when somebody has 8 3/4 inch hands at the Senior Bowl, right, and then all of a sudden a month later they come up with a 1/2 inch larger hand, it's not because he grew that hand, it's because he learned, he made that hand more flexible, so it's a more acceptable measurement. Now, there's a question on like how many of these guys are doing this before they get their hands measured initially. But yeah, when I see somebody do that or have that, I'm always like, yeah, I don't care what that second measurement is. You ain't going to fool me because I know what that first one was before you did all that stretching. Because you know what? You ain't going to do all that stretching during the season. Like, you going to tell me right now, look at me right in my face, Jalen Milroe going to keep up with all that hand stretching during the season on top of everything else he has to do to play quarterback in the NFL? Yeah, it's not likely, but yeah, it's just something they do to make the numbers look better, just leaning on the scale a little bit. Let's get the next one in. What do you think of Brady Cook? Because in the passing drills, he looked like the second best quarterback out there. I think that says more about how this quarterback class looks. I mean, we keep trying to avoid it. Man. And it's so interesting because depending on what story we're talking about, what player we're talking about, it's like we're living in a different quarterback class than what is the reality of the position. But yeah, I think Brady Cook looked like the second best quarterback in passing drills for the same reason Seth Hennigan and Tyler Show look like some of the best quarterbacks in Mobile. And that is to say is because this class is just mediocre. It's not a great quarterback class. And that's just what it is at the position this year. We got another one. Q, thoughts on teams trying to move up to 1? This is interesting, right? We've been hearing a lot about, will the Browns trade up to 1? Will the Giants trade up to 1? I don't know. It's real convenient that it's popping up now. There's something about these reports. I don't think people are lying. Let me be clear on that. I don't think anybody's lying about what they're hearing. I think they're hearing what they're hearing. I'm just questioning what's the motivation behind it. Like, are teams really trying to move up, or is this convenient that this is all happening right at the draft combine? Who is Tennessee trying to create a market for somebody else to jump into? Or, what's really going on here at the quarterback position? Like, did the Browns inquire maybe if it would be a modest trade up and then it's being overblown? Like, something doesn't feel on the up and up with all of these reports about these teams trying to move up. I've heard 2 first-round picks being offered to move up to 1, third-round picks, my bad, to move up to 1, which makes very little sense to me, even for New York, who, again, I guess a lot. You can say a lot and it stick to New York because people don't think that they're really competent there. So, yeah, I think I would wait before I act like anything is imminent when it comes to what's going on here. Also, a lot of noise about what the Browns are doing, and the Browns never have noise out there. So it makes me feel like if there is noise out there, it has to be a bit intentional. We got another one. Quincy, it's not nothing that 4 of the 5 quarterbacks taken number 1 have played in multiple schools. To say experience in different systems may change bust chances. Let me think about how I feel about what you just said. I got to really think about that one. I don't know about that. Let me read it again. It is North noting that 4 to 5 quarterbacks taken number 1 played in multiple schools. Rats, if you could put in chat, just so we can have further context for this conversation, the names of those 4 of the 5 quarterbacks that you're talking about. Let's then we can continue this conversation. Well, I'm assuming Baker Mayfield's one of them. What, Joe Burrow's one of them. I don't know. Feels like this is just coincidental more than it's like it feels causal. You know what I mean? Like it just feels like, yeah, Baker happened to play at multiple different schools. He played at Texas Tech for a little bit, but I don't think the offense for him changed that much between Texas Tech and Lincoln Riley. It was like a little bit different, but he had a whole year to learn that playbook. And sometimes you don't even have to transfer to learn a new offense because coaches get fired, offensive coordinators get promoted or fired. So, I mean, like Joe Burrow, for example, had a new offensive coordinator once he left Ohio State. And then I think Matt Canada got fired. And then Joe Burrow got Joe Brady his last year at LSU. So, you know, I don't think there's a cause there. I would have to disagree. I don't think there's a cause. I think it's because you could get new offensive coordinators literally any way that you do college football. It's not a new phenomenon in my opinion. All right. So we did the positive guide, y'all. You know, we talked about these quarterbacks in a positive way. So in a video I did, we talked about these quarterbacks positively. We sung the praises of all the quarterbacks that I know a little bit of anything about in this draft class, and we kumbaya'd and we talked about it. We high-fived each other. Oh, I like that guy too, and we had fun with it. Now it's time to get negative. It's a hater's guide. Yeah. It's time to get negative about the whole quarterback class. I'm going to talk about all of the reasons not to draft the quarterbacks in this class in a similar way that we did earlier, where we talked about the positives and highlighted the positives of these quarterbacks. Now we're going to approach the conversations about these quarterbacks in a negative direction. So let's go ahead and do this. Let's start with Brady Cook. Absolutely way too conservative at the quarterback position for me. Only threw 11 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, so the interception number is low, but he made Luther Burton's life very difficult at Missouri. Anybody who watched Luther Burton's tape will tell you that man constantly missed Luther Burton. And Luther Burton was the best player on that team, so I don't know really how that happens. I don't really see an NFL future for Brady Cook unless he, you know, becomes a little bit less conservative as a passer. Let's look at number 403, Taylor Elgersma. Now, he had a tough job. This is the dude from Canada who had to come up and last minute fill in at the Senior Bowl. He had a tough job. He had to come in last minute and practice at the Senior Bowl. It's very tough to do. That being said, he was sold to everybody as, hey, man, the physical tools are fantastic with him. Yeah, it just wasn't what was advertised from him. He didn't look like he had outstanding physical tools. Honestly, the tools were average. They weren't bad. They were about average. So I wasn't super excited. I don't think he'll be drafted. Maybe he's a Canadian football player, so maybe he goes to CFL and has a nice career there. But I don't really see an NFL future for him. Seth Hennigan, another guy I don't really see an NFL future for. And the reason I don't think he'll be really a long career in NFL, maybe he might be a prototypical spring football guy, for being honest about it. He has the weakest arm in a draft class that has a lot of weak arms. Like we talked about it, the combine throwing was not good from the quarterback class in general. And that's because this combine, like this quarterback class is not that good and has a lot of weak arms in it. And Seth Hennigan might have the weakest arm of all of them. It's unfortunate, but it's true. Let's move on to Max Brosmer, who we talked about having good physical tools. Well, not good physical tools, but, a nice story coming out the FCS and being able to adjust. I think the ultimate issue with Max is that his physical tools are just lacking a little bit, and he isn't spectacular enough in any area to be above mediocre at a NFL level. So I think he will always be a practice squad or a third quarterback option. Maybe if your team's not doing too hot and they want a cheap backup, maybe he might be able to elevate himself to backup. But I see him living the fringe quarterback life. Now, because he played in a pro-style offense, because he's going to be somebody I think will play in practice really well. I think he'll be sticky on NFL rosters, but I do think that he's going to have a trouble staying on like the active roster. I think he's going to be a practice squad staple pretty much throughout his rookie window here. Tyler Show. We talked about the good stuff with Tyler Show, and I think a lot of people have been talking about the good stuff with Tyler Show. But it's time for us to direct this conversation in a bit more of a negative direction, because some of the stuff I'm hearing about him is just straight up ridiculous. People talking about he's going to be a fringe first round pick. Some people even suggested second round pick. And I think it's time for us to get real about what Tyler Show is. He is a 26-year-old quarterback who has had one full season as a starter in college football. Again, we talked about in the video. My man used to back up Justin Herbert. All pro Justin Herbert, who has it. Yes, Justin Herbert. And he's played one full season of college football. Some of it is injuries. Some of it is level of play. Another red flag for me with him is I'm always weary of quarterbacks who, once they become significantly older than the average age of the college pool playing, they suddenly have a leap in production. Tyler was 25 playing against 18, 19, 20, 21-year-olds. He had a significant age advantage, a significant, I wouldn't say experience advantage because he hasn't played a ton of football, but a ton of advantage when it comes to like having time to learn the game, right? Like I was just a smarter person at 26, significantly so, than I was at 20. Like his brain got to be fully developed. A lot of these dudes out here, their brain ain't developed until like 22. So yeah, he played a lot better once he got super old for the college game, which raises a red flag because, yeah, you should be, right? The same thing happened with the dude like Brandon Weeden, Chris Winkie. Like you can name all these older quarterbacks who came into the league. Maybe was Doug Flutie? Was Doug Flutie old when he came to the league? Somebody correct me if I'm wrong on that. But I think Doug Flutie's the only one you can kind of say was successful. A lot of these, Chris Winkie was kind of successful too. But a lot of these guys who are older come to the league late and they don't really end up being successful because once they're not playing against 18-year-olds, they're playing against 30-year-olds and other grown-ass men, it becomes apparent that was a bit more of an advantage. Also, another thing to consider, my man is 26 years old. He's played one full season of college football, like I mentioned earlier. He might be more of a project than people anticipate because he hasn't played that much football. I'm not trying to draft a 26-year-old project. And if you're looking for the Browns to draft a 26-year-old project, that would break every trend that this team has had, every guardrail that this team has had. They usually don't draft older players. Tyler Shaw would be one of the oldest players in this draft class that is expected to be drafted. So those are the hater reasons on Tyler Shaw. Riley Leonard, 159 here. The passing is just never going to be what you want it to be with him, man. Like, it's just never going to be there. He's just not a consistent passer. His frame, while he is big, is not wide. Like, he's not a big guy. Like, you look at Will Howard. Will Howard's a big guy. Riley Leonard's just tall, right? He's 6'3". He's tall, but he's very slight. So his run style of going up the middle, while it's effective in college football, where he's a bigger guy in college football, his frame's not going to be exceptionally big in the NFL. So he's not going to be that effective of a runner, even doing what he did at Notre Dame. So I don't think his game translates. He's not going to be the passer you want him to be. He's just been an inconsistent guy from the passing position his whole career. And the higher up he played in college football, the more and more his ability or inability as a passer came up as a problem for him. All right, let's talk about Kyle McCord, number 145 here on the board. We talked about the positives with him. Let's talk about the negatives. He left Ohio State and they got better. Like, for all the things that he overcame at Syracuse, and he played well, and you got to give him credit for that. The stance is he left Ohio State. Ohio State went and got Will Howard, and they went way farther with Will Howard than they would have ever went with Kyle McCord. And for all the flack that Will Howard does get, because he played in this offense that has all of these tools at wide receiver, the same exact thing was true for Kyle McCord, and he couldn't make it happen. Matter of fact, he was throwing to his high school best friend, and he couldn't make it happen. That was like the worst part of his game at Ohio State, was him throwing to Marvin Harrison Jr. He went to the ACC, which is a drop down in competition to the Big 12. He played a lot better in the ACC, but it's not the same as having that level of competition that you're going to have in the Big 12. I mean, not the Big 12. I'm tripping there. The Big 10. So that is the big concern with Kyle. Why was Ohio State worse with him at quarterback versus Will? Like, if you're going to tell me that Will Howard is not special or not that good, he's getting overrated because of the playoff run, but you're high on Kyle McCord, you got to explain those two things to me, because Ohio State was significantly better once they replaced Kyle McCord as the quarterback for the team. And that does matter as much as his success at Syracuse matters as well. Dillon Gabriel. It ain't hard to figure out what hater points you could come out with Dillon Gabriel. He's small, he's left-handed, and these throwing drills post the season, like when he's on tape, the arm doesn't look bad. But man, in the Senior Bowl, he had some very scary moments where it looked like his arm is just not going to make it. And in the combine, again, he wasn't consistent with hitting outs. He was like, the whole thing with Dillon Gabriel, right, is he's supposed to sell you this ideal that he could be a game manager. He could be this consistent guy in the NFL. But in the pre-draft process, Dillon Gabriel has demonstrated that he's very inconsistent, at least while doing this pre-draft stuff. Maybe he benefited from a lot of smoke and mirrors throughout his college career. Maybe the increase in size, and speed of the players that he's playing around has a great effect on him. But there's something different about the Dillon Gabriel that you saw on tape at Oregon and at UCF and at Oklahoma, and the Dillon Gabriel you're seeing in the pre-draft process, where he doesn't look accurate, he doesn't look consistent, he's not playing good football. He was somebody you expected to be really good at the Senior Bowl, was not good at the Senior Bowl, got outplayed by Tyler Shaw and Seth Henigan, which nobody expected. Same thing comes around with the combine. You expect him to be able to hit some of these throws, show the scouts that he has better arm strength than people give him credit for, because you see it on film. But comes to the combine, and it didn't look good for him. So that is a massive concern for Dillon Gabriel. Let's go to Will Howard. Hey, look, I like Will Howard's tape. I talked about it before, but the thing you cannot ignore about Will Howard is that arm it's concerning. It's not the weakest arm I've ever seen. It's not a dangerously incapable arm, but it is surfing around Case Keenum, right? Like it's in that Case Keenum range where you're worried, hey, is this a career backup or is this a guy who could potentially start? And in order for him to be a potential starter, he has to do something to adjust for that arm strength, because it seemed like he tried to get more zip on the ball at the combine, and that greatly affected his consistency and his accuracy. So is he somebody who cannot put the ball in a place where it needs to be if he has to throw it with any oomph? Is that something that he can adjust? I don't know. But all of these things from somebody who's 6'5" and 230 pounds, that has to be addressed before you can consider taking Will Howard any higher than maybe mid to late second round, and definitely like third, fourth round. So that's the big concern with Will Howard. The arm strength is a serious concern, right? It's not like Shedeur Sanders where he doesn't have the strongest arm in the world, but it's not a big deal. No, he has an arm that you need to be worried about, because I don't know if he can play and use at least 70% of the field with his current display of arm strength. With Quinn Ewers, it's a similar complaint, except for Quinn Ewers is not as decisive as Will Howard. He's not as accurate as Will Howard, and he's a flat-out disaster on deep balls, where Will Howard is not a disaster on deep balls. Not Kyle McCord. Quinn Ewers, flat out, like every time he throws to the field side, it's a scary movie for the offensive coordinator, because who knows who's going to get to that ball first. And it's more shocking because like Quinn Ewers was a 5-star prospect. People thought he had a rocket arm in high school, and then he gets to college and it's like, what happened? Like, was there a shoulder injury at some point in his career? Like, did something go wrong with Quinn Ewers? I don't know, but that arm is just not doing it. There are moments where he makes some nice throws at Texas, but there are a lot of moments where you look at Texas and think to yourself, man, if they could have put Arch Manning in, maybe they could have been a better team. And it's never a good sign for a quarterback that you're thinking about drafting when everybody who watched his team played or rooted for Texas is wondering, man, what could have we have done if we put the backup in? Could we have accomplished more? So you want to draft a guy that people already are dreaming about the backup. I wouldn't want to do that, right? The last guy that was put in that position was Spencer Rattler with Caleb Williams, and Caleb Williams ended up being a significantly better prospect than Spencer Rattler. Quinn Ewers and Arch Manning has that same energy behind it. Also, Quinn Ewers be playing scared sometimes, and that's just not something that you want out the quarterback position. All right, let's go to our next guy, Jalen Milroe. Jalen Milroe. Look, I like Jalen Milroe as a person. I think that some of the stuff that he's achieved off the field is really cool, right? Talk about a grad student. Love the way that he talks about his family. Love the way that he talks about success in general, right? You listen to him on the podcast. Jalen Milroe talks about how it's not just doing it by yourself, it's doing it as a team. And I think that's an important mindset for a quarterback to have. If Jalen Milroe could hit his layups as a quarterback, I would be all for taking Jalen Milroe. But him hitting his layups has been such a difficult proposition for him in college football that I cannot sit here and recommend that the Browns take him in the first 2 days of the draft. It would be absurd. And that's the big difference, right? A lot of people compare Jalen Milroe to Jalen Hurts, and I could see why they would make that transition, right? Jalen Milroe has a similar build to Jalen Hurts. Both were Alabama quarterbacks for a time, both fantastic runners, not the best throwers of the football, but they're not good throwers in different ways. Jalen Milroe can make a spectacular throw, but he can't make a consistent throw. Like, he could do an amazing thing one time out of 10, but he can't do what you need him to do 7 times out of 10. You feel me? Like, there's going to be a wild level of variancy on these throws. You're going to have some throws you go, damn. And you're going to have some throws where you go, how does that happen, right? Like, for every Auburn throw to Isaiah Bond that you get a throw where like Jalen Milroe just like straight up misses an extended handoff to a running back. And you're just sitting there like, how does he miss that? He cannot for the life of him, consistently hit the layups. He has the exact skill set of the quarterback that will drive you crazy, right? Because he's going to show you these flashes and show you that he could do these things. And then you just ask him to do something simple, like hit mesh on 3rd and short, and he takes a 10-yard sack. The pocket presence for Jalen Milroe has been a big issue. He takes a lot of hits, and he has small hands, and he takes a lot of hits. Also, he has small hands, and he's going to be running a lot. So you're worried about fumbles becoming a problem in the next level, especially if you're drafting him for a team like Cleveland. It's going to be playing in the weather. For as intriguing as Jalen Milroe is because of his physical attributes and his inability to physically hit a layup as a quarterback are the same exact reason you don't really have much faith in his ability to develop as a guy that's going to be much of a threat at the next level. My comp for him, also, I will hit on this. Sometimes we fall into this crutch about talking about Jalen Milroe by saying, hey, the ceiling is incredible for him. I'm going to challenge that notion. I don't think that the ceiling for Jalen Milroe is that incredible because, again, he cannot hit the layups. I think that's always going to be a problem for him. Maybe different degree of an issue, but it's always going to be a problem. Staying ahead of the sticks is going to be a problem for Jalen Milroe. And as long as that's an issue, his ceiling is not that high. I think he could be Tyrod Taylor. I don't want to be the team that drafts Jalen Milroe. I want to be the second team that gets him, right? Somebody's going to have to draft him, develop him for 4 years. I want to be the team in 4 years that signs him if you need a quarterback really quick, because I think there might be something there with Jalen Milroe, because I do love the personality. I think he is really smart. I think, he is really hard working, so he might put the work in to fix some of this stuff, to hit a higher percentage of layups, and he might have a Tyrod Taylor-like second leg to his career. But I ain't trying to draft that in no 3rd round. Like, I don't think any team that drafts him going to get any use out of him. Jackson Dart, I'm not a big fan of Jackson Dart. I feel like he fits the mold of the overhyped Ole Miss quarterback that eventually ends up playing in the UFL that we've seen with Chad Kelly and Matt Corral, I think, was the last guy that we did this with. Some people even did it with the guy, Tiamu, right, out of DC, right? There's always like an Ole Miss Lane Kiffin guy that people fall in love with, but there's a lot of smoke and mirrors in that Ole Miss offense. And even with those smoke and mirrors, I think he was a late processor in that offense. And he wasn't necessarily the most consistently accurate guy there. There is some stuff to like. Again, we talked about that in the video prior with Jackson Dart, but I just don't think the hype and the noise for Jackson Dart this process matches the prospect. And I think if you draft him in the 3rd round, there's a high chance that this ends up being a Matt Corral or a another situation where you take a guy earlier, like a Kyle Trask ended up being this too, where you take a guy earlier and you never really get anything out of him, because I just think right now he's a bit overhyped. People talk about him sliding into the 1st round. I just don't see that for him. All right, let's talk about Shedeur. What do we not like about Shedeur Sanders? I've talked about this a ton, so I'll be brief here. Shedeur has bad habits, and he's not athletic enough to get away with those bad habits at the next level. He's a drifter in the pocket. He's very flighty in the pocket sometimes. Sometimes he stands in there, takes a hit. Sometimes he's out early. He relies on athleticism when he's not that athletic. I do worry about level of competition being a significant factor for him, because he's going to have to speed his mechanics up, and I don't think he's going to bode well if he has to speed his mechanics up. You watched him play against a team like Nebraska, right? They have an athletic defensive tackle in Ty Robinson, and that gave Shedeur Sanders hell. Literally, if do this with me, literally in chat, do this with me. If you go and look for athletic edges, pro level edges in the games they had against Shedeur Sanders, and you look at what Shedeur Sanders has done against those guys, it's been bad news all the time. Oregon, the year prior, and I believe against Leatu Latu, again, UCLA, 2 horrible games for Shedeur Sanders. This year, plays Tyler Batty, looks terrible, plays Nebraska, looks terrible. When those defensive lines get faster, he does not look very good. That is a big concern with Shedeur Sanders, especially in the NFL, especially you're thinking about drafting him to the AFC North. So as pretty as his ball is, and he can throw as accurate as anybody in this draft class, the size, he's not a big guy. He's kind of undersized at the position a little bit. Not super undersized to the point to where you're overly concerned about it, but still a bit undersized. You would like him to have more on his frame than he does. You have the whole Sanders family apparatus thing surrounding him as well. Just a lot of questions about Shedeur's translation to the pros. Let's talk about Cam Ward here. What are the negatives about Cam? Look, Cam can sling it. Cam has that arm talent that you want out of a quarterback that's going to go this early. What Cam does not have is the poise and mental control of a quarterback that you want to take this early. Cam often makes questionable decisions at the quarterback position. That is a concern for me for a quarterback that you want to play in the NFL. We've seen that be a concern, right? There's a lot of similarities between him and Zach Wilson, some of the wild stuff that you like to do. It doesn't seem like he likes to be in structure. Doesn't seem like he has any interest in being in structure, right? When you ask Cam Ward about it, he's like, hey, I take up time in the pocket. I think that's a good thing. Doesn't understand why he needs to be in more of a sense of urgency. For as talented as he is, I think he throws up a lot of the red flags that concern me about a quarterback prospect going this early in a much different way than what happens with a lot of quarterback prospects, right? Like some guys like Bo Nix, you're wondering, is that going to translate to the NFL, that physical skill set? Same thing with like a guy like Will Howard, right? Is that going to translate to the NFL? To a lesser extent, Michael Penix. Then there are guys who you worry about if their play style can translate to the NFL. He's played 5 years as a starter. He's not changed a single thing about how he likes to play. He does not like to play in structure. He is constantly late in structure in times where it is absolutely imperative for him to just take what's in front of him. He still doesn't do it. Third and short situations, he will still hold the football for a ridiculously long amount of time, even though people are open underneath. These are things that at Miami are going to be okay because Cam Ward is supremely talented and more talented than most of the players he would play against. So he could get away with it at Miami, and it's going to look fine at Miami. But even at Miami, it showed its cracks. I mean, this is a team that should have been in the playoff, ended up playing in the Duke Mayo Bowl or the Pop-Tart Bowl, wherever it is that they had to play it. But in Cam Ward's level of play had something to do with that. So, yeah, just in the NFL, him holding the ball, that's going to matter, right? Him not being very decisive, that's going to matter. Him not making sound football decisions on a regular basis when he drops back, that's going to matter, right? All that stuff turns into interceptions, and then it makes you not care about the fact that he could throw the football super far and super long. A lot of people want to see Patrick Mahomes with him, but oftentimes when you want to see Patrick Mahomes with the prospect, you end up finding out it's Jameis Winston, right? You end up finding out that it's just an interception machine. That's my big concern with Cam Ward, is that he's not going to be somebody who can consistently keep the ball on the side of the field that it's supposed to stay at. Maybe he can get some chunk plays, maybe he can get some net yards, but he might end up being an interception machine or a turnover machine because he has these habits that I don't think he has any interest of growing out of. Maybe the NFL, he learns the hard way and he gets out of here, but 5 years as a starter in college football, no interest in changing it. I don't see why I would be convinced that it would change later. You see what I mean? But that's the hater's guide to the 2025 quarterbacks class. All right. We done hating. We done hating, y'all. I want to thank everybody for joining me today. Make sure y'all have a great day. Have an even better night. We have dueling mock drafts on next. All right, so we just talked about the quarterback. Jacob and Sam are on after me. That's going to be a really fun time with those two. Want to thank everybody who commented, who left the comment. Shout out to the producer, Ian, for running through today's show. Want to thank everybody for having me on here. But now let's switch to the dueling mock draft. Make sure y'all check that out and hit subscribe while you're at it. You already been here an hour. Hit subscribe. What you doing? And hit the notification bell so you don't ever miss anything. All right. Y'all have a good one. Peace.